Player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. We have a new unit added to game this week. It is Nichol, a Final Fantasy Brave Exvius main character that they have finally brought over into Ardra here in War of the Visions. He is a new DPS hero as part of the Water class. He does equip books as his primary weapon and equipment type for vision card purposes. He is a magic attack damage dealer, though, and that's straight magic attacks. A lot of them have cast times, kind of stereotypical magic unit in that regard. He does have a unique main job of Aldarian Tactician with the Spellblade and Arithmetician subjobs as a 70 cost unit. Very important distinction when we look at those costs, just to get an idea of the relative power level and expectations, if you will, but he certainly is a good one. Now, some quick hit general thoughts. He is a great damage dealer with high magic res pen and AoE res pen for both his attack types. Spear penetration, sure, a little bit lacking, but his vision card that you can get for him and equip in a majority of his teams actually does make up for that in a half decent way. He also comes with 38% imperils for both enemy spirit and water resistance, and can remove magic honeycomb barriers too, which we are seeing an uptick in. The barrier break there for general magic attacks and like HP scaling barriers isn't there. That's okay. There's still a wide variety of other ways in which he can do his damage. And he is a great hybrid unit in the sense that he's not only a DPS, but he does have some semi-support capabilities, and it comes in the form of sequential abilities that after you use some of his offensive attacks, he's got two different sequential follow-ups. One of them will give a teammate 20% physical damage reduction for 3 turns. The other one will give an ally 15 AP and 150 CT to help get their turn quicker. Both of these certainly nice to weave into the battle as time goes on. He does have kind of like an overall niche, though, against two very potentially powerful things. One of them is unit resistance in general. He is very good against any enemies that use unit resistance scaling attacks. So anything that are those select 2 or select 3 abilities, any of these units that have piercing type attacks. But there is also a very strong fire resistance niche there. He can get to 35% fire resistance innately because of his MA2, and has a passive ability that you can get another 12% there. So I could see some fun in Arena where if you're seeing a lot of fire teams for a week or two, you throw them in there, jack up the fire resistance, kind of like Summer Elsorel did for a while, and just let him go to town. But that unit resistance niche, though, he's got 27% unit resistance with his passive equipped. That's his cast time reduction, which you'll probably want to have on. And he gets another 30% on a self buff as well. And his largest attack ability is also a reduction of the enemy unit resistance penetration, which is brand new to the game. He's the only unit that can reduce the enemy unit penetration. We've seen characters do this with reducing enemy defense penetration, reducing enemy spear penetration, but never the unit resistance penetration. And overall, he does have good HP and survivability for a 70 cost unit. He's got a heal back when he falls below half health. He's got re-raised for himself, so there's a couple ways there compared to some of the other 70 cost units that he does pretty decently. Now, in terms of overall good teammates and team building, there's honestly a lot because Water and Book are two excellent places to be in the game as far as characters go. There's a lot of Water characters that are still relatively strong as the game has aged, units that people have invested in over time. The Book units are certainly more limited. It's really only Summer Resnick. I only have Velas there because Ice and Water have some good synergies, but I have not seen Velas used in years at this point. But there are upwards of 6 different classes which a Book can slot into. I think the 4 on the left are the primary best ones. Sword Knight and Staff Devout, a little bit limited, but the cards that they do have are high impact cards and can be built up pretty easily. It wouldn't take much to really build them up even further than that. But to me, some of my favorites are obviously the Staff Black Mage, where you have 8 different vision cards with Book and some very potent magic damage dealers in that class as well. Sword Red Mage, certainly a very viable option, and even Katana as well, where Katana has a really nice variety of each one of their units, and each Katana unit seemingly has a different strength of where you might use them. The Glove team is slightly more limited, but Sodali is so strong, it's hard to ignore that grouping overall. And so my top 3 favorite teams, I'm kind of cheating here because I have a couple different iterations. To me, Nichol and Exia are peanut butter and jelly. They do so many good things together. They shut down so many varieties of teams. They complement each other so well in a variety of ways that your third unit can be either Agrius, if you want to go for that ice-water overlap and put a tank out there and have some hate direction in terms of how you dictate how enemies move. Lucille, certainly a viable option as well with what she brings for the utility of the healing. And even Sottily, if you want to go for that hyper-offensive team where Sottily and Exia already do a bulk ton of damage together. Throwing Nichol in there would certainly be a meaningful contributor too. And this second team down here is more of the Dario iteration where it's a little bit more anti-magic just based on what kind of tank Dario is, but I do think individually Garusa or Sephiroth or even Kadaj in some of these instances could be good matchups here. That's the thing about the Katana units is that each one of them brings something a little bit different to the battlefield. So I think all of these are viable. And the last one here is Nichol with Resnick as the different kind of support and sustain, where Resnick also gives magic shields. So this to me is an alternative kind of anti-magic team. I will still give an honorable mention for other variations of mono water as well. Lightning still isn't really oppressively prevalent throughout the game. TG Sid, while certainly is used, I don't think it's had the adoption rate that many of us thought he might have had. And so when you're looking at mono water considerations, I would, Nichol, Exia, and Joom, or Nichol, Exia, and even Kadaj, because Exia can seal enemy buff removal for Kadaj, which does give him a fair amount of strength. I think there's a lot of different ways you can play them. Admittedly, I think most of it is for cost-related things, but when we get to the overall expectations, for me, for Guild War, he's a 3. He's good. Obviously, a little bit behind where the meta is. I think his strength is kind of in the days behind where he's doesn't have a lot of AoE resistance, which we are seeing a lot of area attacks at the moment with some of these larger diamonds from the magic damage dealers. I do like that he has the arithmetician sub-job. That's always been very helpful when it comes to evade units, that because his accuracy isn't great, that height disable ability that he has for arithmeticians can hit those evade units, disable them, and make their hit rates drop to 0. Alternatively, arithmetician does have some healing on that sub-job. It's not great in the middle of the battle, and he will not use it as a DPS kind of AI, but when you're talking about second Guild War attacks, if you have low teammates when that battle starts, he will likely heal them up with the arithmetician sub-job. Now for Arena, I actually am going 5 for amazing, and a lot of that has to do with the anti-unit res or the anti-fire res strength, where in Arena, where you can be a little more picky in who you choose to attack, he can really be a good game changer depending upon which team you're trying to hard counter. For the PvE scores, he does have some multi-hits. They're relatively small, though the imperils are certainly noticeable, so I'm going with a fair here, but I think it would be difficult to, as a magic damage dealer in particular, to fit him into some of the top PvE teams, but there's certainly some potential there. The cost limited stuff to me is a 5. He is an exceptional 70 cost unit. Brings a lot to the table, not only from a damage perspective, but as some of that pseudo support perspective, where his sequence abilities do really help out your teammates, that you have some roll compression within him. The TMR for me is fair. It's a cloth type TMR that really just boosts your defense and spirit and reduces enemy penetrations for those types, which is fine. I just don't think it's a major game changer because it's a cloth type and it doesn't really have any supremely strong stats on it that I think you would ever use it as a stat stick. So it's okay. It could be worse, but really not all that amazing. But the overall score for me for this as a unit is a 4. I think he's a great unit. My takeaways, I think he will help clean up any remnants you're seeing of Sephiroth and Shreka. He can absolutely play ball with that team. He is very good in that regard. He's also a very strong Exia partner in the water and magic cast of characters. And because you can get him for 2k paid, which is among the best unit acquisition deals we've ever had in the game ever. He's one of those rare 70 cost units that I do think there is some reincarnation potential, because you can very easily still acquire some of his shards at later times, not only from the Mind Sphere exchange in the Mog Shop. He's going to have the shard up in the barracks and the hard quest for right now. And then even later on when it comes to select shard tickets, he's not the worst one to pump into depending on the status of your account. So there's a good chance you could still get him to anywhere from like 30 to 50 reincarnations pretty easily if you are going for that 2k paid banner, which does actually give him some leg up competitive advantage compared to other 70 cost units, particularly because he is a permanent pool 70 cost unit. Some of these limited or festival related type 70 cost units, it's hard to get those mind spheres over time. It's expensive to max in the short term, but for someone like Nichol, it is far more accessible, which actually is really great for him overall. But that's my thoughts overall. For those of you that are using the unit, good luck. Hopefully he does give you some impact value. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.